Hello everyone, and welcome to the BFA class review series. My name is Mr. Couchy, and I will lay out for you some of the changes affecting Retribution Paladin going into battle for Azeroth. Although we are close to the end of the beta, some of this is still subject to change, so don't take everything here said as law. Retribution in Legion was a bit of a mess. Not to say it was bad, but it just didn't know what it wanted to be. It had lots of burst AoE with Crusade at all full stacks. Anything standing in front of you disappeared in a flash. It has a window within a window class, as Judgment's window for damage enabled Ret to do some crazy things. It also enabled them to be garbage in the wrong hands. The skill cap was a bit too high, and the heavy reliance on haste just didn't make it viable until the far end game. Let's see if Blizz felt the same way. Crusader Strike had its cooldown increased from 4.5 to 6 seconds. And Divine Steed had its cooldown increased from 45 seconds to a minute. I guess they assumed that Ret just hit too fast and moved a little too quickly. Blade of Wrath's current mechanic is becoming baseline named Art of War, where your auto attacks have a chance to reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice. Blade of Wrath, the talent, will now increase the frequency of Art of War as it resets and causes the proc to also increase the damage of your next Blade of Justice by 25%. Your Judgment window is gone. Removed is Judgment that increases damage taken from your Holy Powder spenders by 10%, and that Judgment also hits one additional enemy, and your old Mastery, which was Divine Judgment, increases Judgment damage by 35%, and causes Judgment to increase damage taken from your Holy Powder spenders by 14%, yada 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 yada. It was too much, so Blizzard decided to kind of bring that back down to earth. So new Judgment causes the target to take 25% increased damage from your next Holy Power spender. Your new Mastery is Hand of Light, which increases holy damage done by 13%. Avenging Wrath no longer increases all damage and healing done by 35%. You now call upon the light to become an avatar of Retribution, increasing your damage, healing, and critical strike chance by 20% for 20 seconds. Retribution, when any party or raid member dies within 40 yards, you gain 20% increased damage and 30% reduced damage taken for 10 seconds. Let's see how many people try to abuse this. Blessing of Protection, Blade of Justice, Cleanse, Divine Storm, Flash of Light, Blessing of Kings and Wisdom, Hand of Hindrance, Shield of Vengeance, and Templar's Verdict all got minor number or wording changes. Quite a few gameplay changes within the Mastery and Judgment ones. On the surface, it seems to fix its complexity and streamlines their focus to dumping as much into a single Templar's Verdict as possible. Lots of talents got an overhaul, as Blizz wanted to get away from the shitstorm it created with the old Judgment window. Removed are Divine Hammer, Divine Intervention, Final Verdict, Greater Judgment, Holy Wrath, Judgment of Light, and Virtue's Blade. That's quite a bit. Let's see if they put in something that's actually of use. Tier 1, you saw Zeal come in. You already had Zeal before, but it's changed a little bit. You judge a few foes, empowering you with Holy Zeal, causing your next 3 auto attacks to occur 50% faster and deal an additional amount of holy damage. Your new Execution Sentence calls upon the Light's Punishment upon an enemy, dealing a bunch of holy damage and increasing the target's holy damage taken from your attacks by 20% for 12 seconds. Righteous Verdict is Templar's Verdict increases the damage of your next Templar's Verdict by 15% for 6 seconds. So if you still like that little window going on, you could use a Templar's Verdict, you can then judge, and then your next Templar's Verdict will be that much more empowered. Tier 2 saw Hammer of Wrath coming back, everyone's, I guess, favorite talent. You hurl a Divine Hammer that strikes an enemy for holy damage. You're only usable on enemies that have less than 20% health, or while you were empowered by Crusade or Avenging Wrath, and it generates 1 holy power. As I stated before, the new Blade of Wrath is Art of War resets the cooldown of Blade of Justice 100% more often and increases its damage by 25%. Tier 4 sees new Divine Judgment. Each enemy hit by an enemy that consumes holy power increases the damage of your next judgment by 15%, stacking up to 15 times. Wake of Ashes, your old artifact ability, is now a talent here. You lash out at your enemies, dealing a bunch of damage to all enemies within 12 yards in front of you, reducing their movement speed by 50%, and stunning any demon or undead enemies for 5 seconds. It also generates 5 holy power. Tier 5 sees Unbreakable Spirit, which reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield, Shield of Vengeance, and Lay on Hands by 30%. Tier 6, you see Selfless Heal. Your successful judgments reduce the cast time and mana cost of your next Flash of Light by 35%, and increases its effect on others by 20%, stacking up to 3 times. Tier 7, we have Inquisition back, if anybody remembers this one. It consumes up to 3 Holy Power to increase your damage done and haste by 10%. It lasts 15 seconds per Holy Power consumed. Ooh, quite a bit of new ones. Let's see what the changed ones are like. Crusade increases your damage done and haste by 3% for 25 seconds. Each Holy Power spent during Crusade increases damage done and haste by an additional 3%. It's now a maximum of 10 stacks, not 15. Divine Purpose, your Holy Power spending abilities that consume Holy Power have a 15% chance to make your next Holy Power spending abilities free and have their damage increased by 20%. Fist of Justice and Fires of Justice just had wording or number changes, so nothing huge. Man, that was a lot. This was a complete teardown and rebuild of Ret within the game. Not sure how to feel about this, to be honest. Well, actually I do. As it stands right now, the spec feels like crap. Especially through leveling, I wanted to blow my head off. The change to Art of War does help significantly, but there were more than a few instances where every single one of my abilities was on CD, and I just stood there with my dick swinging in the air. I am positive I didn't play it to the top 1% of ability, but man, it feels like a slog. Every ability does feel substantial, and the change to Blade of Wrath is certainly welcome. With the right haste levels, the spec becomes a monster again and flows like water. I like the new 100 row because it lets the player decide how they want to play. Do you want continuous, do you want burst, or do you want procky damage? I have high hopes for the spec because I know it can bring some pretty good utility to the raid group, but I fear it has lost a place in Mythic Plus. There just doesn't seem to be any great sustained AoE damage coming out from them, outside of maybe Consecration, and I fear they will be taken over by another spec who do have it. How do you think Ret felt in Legion, and how do you think it will perform in BFA? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Thanks for sticking around, like and subscribe, and in case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.